On this edition of Good Day DePaul, Chicago State University lays off a third of its employees.
Anti-Semitic messages appear on the University of Illinois campus.
And some DePaul faculty members are contacted about union representation. I'm Raven Watkins.
And I'm George Rohde, and this is Good Day DePaul. Chicago State University, or CSU, on the city's south side recently laid off more than 300 employees. Like other public institutions in Illinois, CSU worked through almost the entire academic year without receiving state funding. The cuts were made solely among non-teaching staff members, with faculty being spared for the time being. CSU says it's saving about $2 million a month, or 40% of its payroll, because of these cutbacks.
DePaul student Jessica Hughes says she was beaten on the CTA Blue Line during an attempted robbery. Hughes was traveling home in the morning to Berwyn when she says a man approached her on the train. She says he asked for her phone and then pushed her to the floor, beat her, and bit her hand. Hughes says a woman he was with punched her and broke her nose. Hughes says there were other passengers on the train who watched and did nothing. At this point, no suspects have been arrested.
Meanwhile, near the university's Loop campus, a male student says he was kidnapped and sexually assaulted recently at about 10:30 at night. He said someone knocked him out with a noxious substance on a cloth, then took him in an SUV and sexually assaulted and raped him. He was then able to escape the vehicle. So far, no one has been arrested.
Demon-thon is an annual event on DePaul's Lincoln Park campus that raises money for the Anne and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital. Good Day DePaul's Eleanor Lyon was at this year's dance marathon.
DePaul students stood and danced for 24 straight hours in McGrath Arena for the 5th annual Demon-thon Dance Marathon. The students who participate in the event are required to fundraise $250, which is then donated to the Anne and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital. This year, Demon-thon raised more than $270,000, and in the 5 years it's been running, it's raised about $1 million total. Shobi Rao is the Director of Operations and Event Management.
But I think the more important thing about Dance Marathon is that we're here for the families.
Helping children is what attracts so many students to Demon-thon.
I decided to do Demon-thon because of the cause. It's for the kids. I'm actually an elementary education major, so if there was something I could do for the kids early on, I would love that. It would be great.
Though it's not easy for students to go the full 24 hours, the committee that plans Demon-thon provides food about every 3 hours and plans different games and activities throughout the night. At 4 in the morning, Lee was still going strong.
There was a time where it was really tiring, but the more you move, the better it gets.
The current committee is already recruiting new committee members and planning for Demon-thon 2017. For Good Day DePaul, I'm Eleanor Lyon.
MAP grants provide financial assistance to Illinois students to attend college. The grants still have not received state funding because of the feud between Republican Governor Bruce Rauner and the Democratic-controlled state legislature. DePaul Student Government Association, or SGA, led a bus trip to Springfield recently to advocate for MAP funding. For the past year, SGA has encouraged students to fill out postcards and contact legislators about the issue. For now, DePaul is reimbursing students for the MAP grant money they are not receiving.
Tuition will increase this fall quarter for all DePaul students. Incoming freshmen will pay 3.8% more, continuing undergrads will pay 2.5% more, and graduates will pay between 1.6% and 2.5% extra. The reason for these increases is that the university anticipates a decline in enrollment. While tuition is going up, the university is also boosting financial aid by 7%.
It's an issue that Vice President Joe Biden recently spoke out against at the University of Pittsburgh: rape and sexual assault on college campuses. DePaul students recently came together to spread awareness of this issue. Good Day DePaul's Eleanor Lyon was there.
Take Back the Night is an annual event held in the U.S. and throughout the world. The goal is to bring attention to sexual violence. This year, the DePaul Feminist Front gathered in the Lincoln Park campus quad. Their focus? How DePaul handles the dorm living situation for students who have been accused of rape. Kara Rodriguez is a core organizer for the DePaul Feminist Front.
We ask that they notify students who are going to be assigned with these people and give them the opportunity to say no and to refuse the housing and have them housed elsewhere.
Currently, if there is a report of sexual or relationship violence, the school will step in and take interim measures if required. The university released a statement saying these interim measures could include, for example, modifying the living arrangements of the individuals involved. When implementing interim measures, DePaul is attentive to the rights of the students involved, including their individual privacy rights. Prior to the event, the students created the hashtag #TakeBackTheDorms to advocate for their cause. In the quad, a few students stood up to speak. The students then began a march down Belden Avenue. Under DePaul's current policy, the protesters say students in dorms could be living with someone who is currently facing rape allegations, and no one would know. Rodriguez has met and talked with students who have lived through this situation.
An important step is to talk about, bring this to the attention of the university so they can be aware that this is happening and that, there needs to be steps to address it.
The university says safety of all students and the campus community is of utmost importance. For Good Day DePaul, I'm Eleanor Lyon.
Graduation at DePaul is always a special time, but there's special and then there's really special. Get this. 17-year-old Antoinette White is graduating from high school and college in the same week. White lives outside of Peoria, Illinois. She is graduating with a 3.9 GPA from Dunlap High School and a 3.6 GPA from Illinois Central College. She plans to study international business at Illinois State University next fall.
And then there's the other end of the spectrum. At 84 years old, Jerry Pollard is earning his first bachelor's degree from Northeastern Illinois University. He's the oldest student to do so in the last 55 years. 2 of his 9 grandchildren actually graduated college before him. Coming up in sports, a tough ending to the Big East season for the DePaul softball team.
And I sat down with DePaul's uncontested candidate for SGA president. All that and more next on Good Day DePaul. Evan Walter is here now with Good Day DePaul Sports. So Evan, the DePaul track team had a great Big East meet.
Yeah, they finished off the season on a really high note. The Blue Demons scored big at the Big East Outdoor Track and Field Championships, bringing home 9 conference titles. On the men's side, Trevor Kintite took home 2 awards, placing first in both the hammer throw and the shot put. Blake Thompson took first in the men's discus throw, Brian Mado won the triple jump, and it was a clean sweep for the Blue Demons in the 400-meter hurdles, where Jarvis Hill, Kyle Decker, and Evan Lowry took home first, second, and third respectively. Decker also placed first in the 110-meter hurdles. On the women's side, senior sprinter Taylor Whitler took home 2 first-place finishes in both the 100-meter and 200-meter sprints. Senior Sarah Moss won the women's discus throw. Sticking with the Lady Blue Demon track team, Whitler took home the final Women's Big East Track and Field Athlete of the Week award. It was her second time winning the award this season. Let's now turn to the DePaul softball team. The Lady Blue Demons season came to an end after a 10-6 loss to Butler in the Big East Tournament semifinals. But all wasn't lost. Senior pitcher Morgan Mays was named the Big East Player of the Year and was selected first team All-Conference. Also joining her on the All-Conference team was catcher Naomi Tejas and juniors Dylan Christensen and Nicole Peel. And the Blue Demons coaching staff was named the Coaching Staff of the Year. Now to DePaul's tennis. 3 members of the women's team took home Big East honors over the weekend. Yulia Shapenya, Rebecca Mitreya, and Patricia Lankranian were selected to the All-Big East team. Together, the trio helped the Lady Blue Demons to the best record in the Big East during the regular season and a second-place finish in the Big East tournament. Not to be outdone, the men's team had 2 members selected to the All-Big East team. Sten Lusink and Jan Willem Fielzer took home the honors after helping DePaul to a 3rd-place ranking in the Big East tournament. Finally, former DePaul standouts Allie Quigley and Keisha Hampton made their WNBA season debuts over the weekend. Quigley, the 2-time reigning 6th Man of the Year award winner, started her 8th season in the league and her 4th as a member of the Chicago Sky. Hampton made her rookie season debut for the 2015 WNBA champion Minnesota Lynx. She played the final 2 minutes in the Lynx's blowout win over Phoenix. Great to see some DePaul athletes in the pros.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully more to come soon.
Definitely.
Unlike this past year, DePaul has an uncontested election for SGA's top jobs this coming year. That means Rick Popp will be the SGA president next year, and Raven's with him in the studio now. Raven?
Thank you, Eric. Thanks, Rick. Thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So first things first, I just wanted to know, What are your plans for some accomplishments you'd like to do in this upcoming year under your presidency for SGA?
Gotcha. Yeah, so there's 3 big initiatives that I've really been focusing on when talking to different students and student organizations on campus. The first being SGA as an advocate. As student government, that's our biggest role, is advocating for students, with talking to administration, faculty, and staff within the university, relaying concerns and discussing what's going to make a student's best experience here at DePaul happen, what needs to be done, what changes need to be made, or what things need to be improved and are highlighted for students. And also working from the top down. So whatever things may be happening up above in the university, whether it's new policies or changes to tuition, relaying those those pieces of information from administration back down to students so they're aware of what's going on at their university. Secondly, we really want to focus on inclusivity and collaboration. That's been a huge SGA initiative this year in my role as vice president, and I want to continue that going forward. There's over 300 student organizations here on campus, and each one of them has something great to offer to DePaul. And so I think it's really important that we highlight that and work together to make DePaul the best that it can be. So whether it's, working on co-sponsoring events with each other, or even just, hey, let's all go watch the women's basketball team. Just little things like those, getting together and seeing what we can do, and maybe seeing who we might not know that may end up being our best friend later on.
Right.
And last but not least, we have SGA working for community engagement. And that's some kind of a multifaceted initiative that we have. So the first facet of that is working especially with voter registration and for the upcoming election, and getting students involved outside of the greater sphere of DePaul. So working in Chicago and the state of Illinois. So, like I said earlier, voter registration, also just being engaged in political issues that may be going on. So every year SGA advocates for the MAP grant, and so really continuing that forward, because at this point, who knows what's going to happen with that next year. And the other facet of community engagement goes to DePaul's Ascension mission of community service and asking what must be done. So working with other departments in the university and continuing DePaul's great commitment to community service.
All right, great. And how do you plan on getting students involved? Do you have some
ways
so you're going to do that?
Working with SG as a whole, so the general bodies, including senators and the rest of cabinet. We really want to get out there to student organizations. So right when we hit the fall running next year, we want to reach out to student organizations and get SGA members to go visit them, talk to them, see what their concerns are, but also just see what we can do to work together.
All right, great. And so I know there are some initiatives that stem from the previous SGA initiatives. Are there any different or completely different initiatives that you plan on creating, or?
Yeah, so one big thing I'm really focusing on right now is figuring out how to try and transform the Keep Calm and Do the FAFSA campaign. Because right now students typically see that open up January 1st, and we have a usual February 1st kind of deadline for that, especially for MAP recipients. But going into next year, now it's changed a little bit. So students the application opens October 1st. And so it's not something that students are really aware of. And so we really want to transform that campaign so people don't see it and just be like, oh, here's that again. Right. But change it so that, oh, wait, something else is happening. Like, what do I need to know? And get students involved in that conversation and know what needs to be done right away in order to help continue their education.
Right. And last but not least, what are you looking forward to the most in your presidency for SGA?
Well, I can go on and on with that. I'd say just the chance to continue on in SGA. I started off as the graphics coordinator my freshman year, going into it just being like, yeah, I'm gonna continue on with my Photoshop skills and see what I can do. But 3 years later, here we are running for president, and I couldn't be more excited to start next year to just meet more people, students, faculty, staff, and get to know the university better and get to make this place the best that it can be for everyone in it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Rick, for joining us today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Back to you, Eric.
After the break, a film that will change the way you think about pianos, plus a unique exhibit at the DePaul Art Museum. Those stories coming up. When we think of the piano, we normally think of just a single player. But how about 147 people playing the piano at the same time? Well, as I found out, that's the subject of a unique documentary with a DePaul connection. Over the past several years, Dolores Wilbur, a graphics design teacher in DePaul's Digital Cinema School, has seen unique cornerstones of Chicago disappearing.
I'm a native Chicagoan. I grew up with the city being a place where communities were integrated. It's grown into a city where most of the jobs have left. And we're left with a lot of places like big warehouses where things used to be made that are now becoming places where we buy food and entertainment.
Out of her concern with what she saw as the culture of Chicago disappearing into commercial consumption, Wilbur set out to tell the story of the Chicago where she grew up. She told it in the basement of a small warehouse, through the sound of 147 pianos playing at once. It was filmed at Lucas Piano Service in Chicago's West Side. The underlying story is about Lucas's struggle to stay in business in a world increasingly dominated by digital media.
I grew up with a father who was a contractor, and he drove us all over the city. And we got to visit all these places that were almost a different world than the outside world. And I see those spaces disappearing.
Wilbur collaborated with different departments at DePaul to get this project underway, and ultimately used Project Blue Light to involve students in the production. According to DePaul's website, Project Blue Light is a professional motion picture production company within the DePaul Digital Cinema program where students can get hands-on experience in motion picture production. Wilbur worked with students, the owners of the warehouse, and players of all different backgrounds and skill levels in order to make these old, seasoned pianos tell her story of a diverse Chicago that seems to be fading away.
Charm. Some pianos have charm. Oh, they just charm the pants off of the listeners. It's a difference between resonance and charm.
I remember getting the sheet for the first day class saying what do you want to do in it? And it was the checklist. It's I want to do camera work, work on sound, do production, anything that was needed.
For Reisberg, having the opportunity to work on a professional cinema production was invaluable. In addition, the most memorable part of the project was the power of the music.
It was just raw. There's no mixing of the sound. It was just the acoustics of the room. It was just the raw energy of it was the best way to describe it.
Beyond the product and the end result of her production, one of the most valuable parts of this experience for Wilbur was exactly that, the experience.
One of the special parts of this program is that you can work and collaborate with all these different programs, with computer science, with cinema, with animation, with social media, with communication, with journalism majors, it's with art people, and I think that is the most precious of opportunities.
147 Pianos was entered into the CIMM Fest, a film festival that celebrates Chicago's international movies and music. The film is not yet available for purchase, but you can find out more on the film's website, 147pianos.com. For Good Day DePaul, I'm Eric Trapphagen.
Birds. They're all around us, but we don't always think about them. However, now birds are the focus of a new exhibit at DePaul Art Museum. I recently got a look at the exhibit and talked to the artist who created it.
The DePaul Art Museum is displaying the vibrant and message-filled collage series, The Secret Birds, created by Chicago native Tony Fitzpatrick. More than 50 of Fitzpatrick's layered collages are on display, marking one of his largest works to date. In each image of The Secret Birds, Fitzpatrick includes various species of birds. He says his fascination with birds stemmed from his childhood when his grandmother would feed them. She told him he could hear God sing if he listened closely.
And that always stayed with me. I thought of them as kind of vessels from another world. They weren't bound by the laws of gravity, they could fly.
His spiritual connection with birds instilled in Fitzpatrick the conviction that birds in nature must be protected.
There was always this idea that nature was something that was 1,000 miles away. It's not. The minute we walk out that door, we are part of a huge, complex ecosystem. And the politics that happen in the city affect that.
The Secret Bird series pays tribute to the various birds that we see in our environment today, like this one here. Many of Tony Fitzpatrick's drawings incorporate poetry, folk art, tattoo art, and other art forms, especially Chicago influences.
Along with the Secret Birds collage, the Art Museum is displaying some of Fitzpatrick's prints from his earlier works. They range from images of drug abuse to prints paying tribute to his father. Another part of the exhibit includes the Artist Studio that showcases Fitzpatrick's carved wooden bird collection. Julie Rodriguez, the museum director and curator, says Fitzpatrick's many talents, along with the fact that he's from Chicago, make his work a unique asset for the museum.
He writes a column for New City every week where he comments about life in Chicago, politics. He's a super interesting person. He's also a playwright. He's performed at Steppenwolf. He is an actor. He was in Chirac. Yeah, he was in Spike Lee's Chirac. He is currently on a show called The Patriot, I believe. He's filming right now, filming this summer. So he's just like a Renaissance man. And DePaul is very committed to showing artists who work in Chicago. And it was really a great time to present almost a retrospective of his work.
The exhibit opened on May 12th, and a number of Fitzpatrick's fans came out to see his work.
It has so much life to it and so much about Chicago, and it brings so much life in simple imagery to the museum.
Of the integration of the collages and the poetry and all of these different forms of artistic expression all drawn together in this ode to birds, these ode to Chicago.
Tony Fitzpatrick's collages are really interesting in the way that they play with the flexibility of language and how it's spread out across the compositions. And I also like birds a lot too, so the compositions with birds are just very, very well done.
Fitzpatrick says bringing his work to DePaul allows a variety of different people to see the exhibit.
It's a perfect place for it because, A, this museum does not charge people admission. It realizes that art belongs to everybody outside of that door. You know, whenever I see museums charging $20 and $25, it makes me wonder who they're trying to keep out. I love that this is in a Chicago neighborhood right next to the L Stop, right across from where Demon Dogs used to be.
Fitzpatrick's mixture of music, poetry, politics, history, and his own experiences speak through the images of his secret bird and print collections, and will remain on display in the DePaul Art Museum until August 21st. I'm Ravenlow Watkins for Good Day DePaul.
That's all for this edition of Good Day DePaul. You can always keep up with us by visiting our Vimeo channel at Good Day DePaul or by going to goodday.depaul.edu.
And also, be sure to visit us on Twitter and Facebook at Good Day DePaul. Thanks for watching. I'm Ravenlow Watkins.
And I'm Eric Trapphagen. Have a good day, DePaul.